Okay, let's talk about this concept of holy longing, which Connie Zweig details in her book, Meeting the Shadow on the Spiritual Path. I'll put the link in the caption and comments. She writes, like a water lily, our image of God draws its life force from the hidden roots in the waters of the unconscious. The image of God also evolves in tandem with the image of the archetypal shadow in us. As we imagine the divine, we reject certain traits, which get banished into what we might call the demonic. By the way, the word demonic here, or the word demonic, its etymology has to do with division or dividedness, right? So a demon is a divided off part. I have an article called, I think it's called Possessed by Trauma, if you want to check that out. It says, and she writes, and in this way we disown both the light of the God image and the darkness of Satan. Therefore, if our God images do not evolve, let's just think about that for a second. If our God images do not evolve, our shadow images remain static as well, narrowing the range in which we can live our conscious life. Okay, so we've kind of done a lot already here. It says reiterating the last couple of videos. But like a water lily, our image of God, so what we think about when we think about God, draws its life from that which we cannot access, that which we cannot experience. What we experience with a water lily is the water lily. We don't experience the root system. We don't experience the ground within which it is rooted. We experience the water lily. And that is how it is with the divine. Any experience we have with the divine, if it has an image, the image of it is the way that we're interacting with it. It's how we can make sense of it. So you can't have an experience with the divine without having some sort of image. If you're having a mystical experience, let's say just in the privacy and quiet of your own living room, there are still going to be colors, sensations, experiences that give shape and language to that, right? Because everything that you experience that's beyond words is simply beyond words. So the words themselves become the water lily, so to speak, that you interact with. So but here's the problem. Christianity, because of the creeds and the heightened value around belief, has structured the God image or the water lily to be a certain way, not only for all people right now, but for all people all time. And what Connie is bringing forward here, which I absolutely love, is that if our God image doesn't evolve, then our shadow, our personal unconscious is static as well. And what this will result in, and I've seen it many, many times, is you've got someone who has been faithful, quote unquote, to God their whole life, but they have these qualities that they simply never developed. Um, and again, this goes back to the collective shadow. So if a man, let's say I'm a man, I've seen this many, many times. If a man who grew up as a Christian, was faithful his whole life, and then dies, maybe there will be this statement at his funeral that he was faithful till the end. But what will also be true is that, and it won't be spoken, obviously, is that there are whole experiences of his humanity and life and relationships that never were experienced, that never got developed. He never knew how to cook. He never knew what it would be like to get on the floor and play with his kids. He never knew what sex, what brought him pleasure other than like sex. And he wouldn't have any other, wouldn't use the word, first of all, most likely, and would never have more language around that. And that is imaged in, every single person slightly different. The collective shadow comes into play where there's a lot of similarities and overlap because of the collective shadow and how that impacts the individual. But Um, uh, when our God image remains the same our whole lives, our unconscious life can't move, and that's because um, if if we're trying to live in service and acceptance, seeking acceptance of a God image that is one way, then it's kind of like when you hold up an object and you try to shine a light on it. If that object never moves and that light never moves, the shadow that is cast will stay the same forever. It never changes, which means that whatever is in the shadow never sees the light. And what is in the light never takes a back seat in order for what's in the shadow to come into play. Right. So likely the person that I'm kind of hypothetically thinking about has highly developed certain skills and ways of existing in their lives, in their relationships, at work, with their kids. They're very attuned in that way, almost automatic. And you might even think about a person, it's so automatic that it seems robotic. But then there's these other areas, these what Jung would call inferior functions, like sex, like play, like pleasure, that are so undeveloped that they never saw the light of day. And there came a point likely where if they did see the light of day would be almost overwhelming and be destructive. But having never developed those things, they then cast this shadow in the relationships of that person, right? So a spouse or kids or family, or, if they're a pastor or priest, their parishioners, if they're a leader, the people that follow them, if they're a business, all these, their unlived life gets passed on to those around them unconsciously and becomes the burden of those who are left. And that's why it's important for us to do this work. It's important for us to look at our God images. Like, well, how has your God image remained the same? How has it been quite dynamic, or maybe even so unformed that I don't have an image, right? Like, it's not uncommon for people to leave high control religion and move directly into an atheistic worldview. And I think that's not bad. Actually, I think that can be developmentally a necessary step, because the image of God has become so concretized that in order to do anything different, you actually have to create significant separation from it. It's like, I won't be able to reimagine this relationship until we get some fucking space. So I'm going to just go over here and be like, there ain't nothing. And not just like choosing it, be like, not a rebellion against mom or dad kind of vibe, but more of like, actually, I need space. I need space from this. And I need to actually feel like there is nothing out there. But the reality about holy longing is this is archetypal. This is an archetype of the human experience. That is, it is an energy that draws us to that which is beyond us. We can call it a million different names and image it a million different ways, but there is this holy, or we could say this wholeness longing. I like to say it that way, the wholeness longing. There is this longing for wholeness that we are all oriented toward. And when we find ourselves alienated from that longing, it can be the most excruciating and most miserable experience a human can have. There is no purpose. There is no life. There is no love. There is no goodness. There is no reason for the suffering. When we're alienated from that, it can lead to some pretty rough states mentally, emotionally, physically. So here's the work for this video. Where is your longing? Where do you find yourself longing? Where do you find yourself desiring? Don't try to shoehorn that into some sort of like abstract, esoteric spirituality if it doesn't naturally fit that way. Maybe it does. But I just want you to, like, what do you long to do? Who do you long to be with? What are you longing to experience? Because my guess is if you're longing for it, there's an assumption that it's not present right now. And therefore, wholeness is pulling you towards that, and you're experiencing that in a form of longing. So, what are you longing for? What are you desiring? What is pulling you energetically in this season?